Robert Zimmerman. Robert, thanks once again for being on our show.
Thanks for having me again.
It's always a pleasure. Robert and Jeff have been on our Sunday night shows a couple of times over the past few weeks, and we wanted to treat you, our weekday listeners, in case you don't hear our Sunday night show, which we do every Sunday night live from 5 to 8, treat you to, let's just say, a great person. And I'm just going to say it just like that, because Robert Zimmerman is a great person. And if his brother's anything like Robert, then he's a great person too. Well, and because I'm talking about person, I'm talking about the soul, the spirit, the goodness of you. And it just comes across thick. And by the way, folks, Robert's going to be on Mark Walter's show Sunday night. Armed American Radio, so you may want to listen to that as well. First of all, Robert, how are you and the family doing since what we'll just call the verdict?
We're doing well. It's still a little surreal. The hiding has definitely ramped up again. You know, we were right back into the spotlight during the trial. After the verdict, it worked out how it should, but it definitely has made the death threats go through the roof, and some of the hiding is really frustrating. You know, I didn't think that many people would react the way that they did to the verdict, but that's kind of what we're faced with now.
You know, Robert, I know it was frustrating that you couldn't be in there during the trial, you know, in the same room as your brother. In the long run, I can't help but think maybe that was kind of a good thing for you and your family. I mean, the cameras kept shifting over to the Martin family. They would have, if you had been sitting there. A lot of people would have been viewing you constantly, and in the long run, maybe that worked out okay. What do you think, Jeff?
You're probably right about that. I mean, cameras were everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
so the death threats are still coming.
Oh yeah, on social media, on email. On email, they're a little bit more veiled. They kind of sneak in compliments, trying to get me to, you know, read a really long email and then say, "And your brother should die," you know, at the end or something. But yeah, they're real. A lot of people just heard those two words, "not guilty," and I think that they kind of read that as nothing happened, and that's certainly not what not guilty means. But nothing criminal happened, and I think that the public still needs a little bit of time to digest the verdict.
Obviously. Your parents, do they receive death threats as well?
They have a website, and Dad is the one who monitors that email. He has spoken on the record that, yes, they do receive death threats. They don't have social media, so they are not, you know, real-time and instantaneous. Anybody can read my Twitter feed because it's public, but their threats are directly sent to their email.
Now, tell me if I'm mistaken, but I believe it was the day after or the Monday after the verdict came down, your parents issued a formal apology, if you will, and if more or less of an invitation to Trayvon Martin's parents that they were sorry and that they would like to have a chance to, I don't know if make amends is the right word. Am I getting this all wrong?
I'm not sure. Maybe that it came back into light. That actual condolence statement was issued September of 2012. But a lot of things that were older...
Maybe that's what it was.
Right, came back into the public eye again, right after the verdict. People kind of, you know, started doing their research all over again, and everything that we had done for the better part of a year was suddenly new again, renewed.
Well, let me put it this way. Are there any hard feelings amongst your family toward the parents and family of Trayvon Martin?
I don't think that hard feelings is the right word. I think that they are rightfully aggrieved to lose a son. I don't have a son. I'm not a parent. I haven't buried my child. I know that there is a lot of remorse that we felt at the time and continue to feel, which is different, a very different word than regret, but there's definitely remorse. There's definitely sadness about what happened. Despite the verdict, the rawness of that feeling, I don't think has ever left. You know, I think that people who are forced to defend their life by taking another carry that with them forever, and their family. When I interact with George, I'll always look at him and know, you know, that truth about him. So you're definitely changed in a way, but I think that sometimes there's some frustration with some of the language, particularly racial language, that keeps kind of appearing in some of the things that they say. It happened before. Unfortunately, one of his parents said that their son was dead because of the color of his skin. That's, you know, not something that was shown to be true. It certainly was never anything that we ever considered would be true. I mean, knowing George, and and just kind of, but they're grieving parents, so I don't take that personally. I think that both families are in a real position, or we can harness this situation to help somehow.
Well, let's change a little bit. What about the prosecution? How do you feel about them? I mean, because I thought they made some outrageous statements.
Yeah, I think that they did too. I think the things they said were wildly inappropriate. I mean, referring to George as a murderer is just absolutely inappropriate.
No, what got me was his desire at the time. They wanted to present it that he desired to do this act. I mean,
right.
Well, that's one common thread amongst all of the critics of the verdict and of your brother. Mm-hmm. They got their facts wrong.
Right.
I mean,
certainly.
It is just one common thread. Jeff, I'd like to ask you a question, though, because Alan Dershowitz, the prominent attorney, OJ and all that, he has said that the prosecutor, Angela Corey, should be removed from office, that she should be charged with whatever the legal term is for violating the trust.
Malfeasance?
Whatever you call it. What do you think?
Well, that would take an act from the governor. I don't see that happening, but I'm sure she's going to have an opponent at her next election. So to speak, I'm sure she's going to draw some opponents.
Well, unfortunately, that next election, and unfortunately, I think all of this played into it as well. She was up for election last year.
Right.
She was on the ticket last year.
Right, and she's a very good friend of Pam Bondi's, a very good friend.
And it's the demographics of Jacksonville. I mean, the woman was looking at this politically. She may have also been looking at it legally, too. I'm not denying that. Jeff, obviously, two legal minds can look at one issue and come away with two different opinions, correct?
Oh, right. I'm just disappointed in the way she handled the discovery in the case. I just thought it was very unprofessional, and I really have sympathy for Don West. Because he spent so many hours, it was like pulling teeth at a dentist to try to get the discovery from that office. Mm-hmm. We're there to seek justice. That's what we're there for. We're not there to play games.
And in the end, I believe that Trayvon parents were victimized by it as well. They expected something more to come out of it, but the evidence just wasn't there. It was, if you will, it was cruel. Right. To treat that family and really anybody out there who was looking at this without looking at it through the lens of the facts.
You're right, Chris.
It was because it set up a false expectation that something should have or would have happened, and then it didn't. It wasn't going to happen.
Right.
And we knew that from the beginning.
Well, we did.
I mean, a lot of other people did. The police department from the beginning was looking at this, coldly, which is how it needed to be looked, coldly and factually.
And speaking of coldly and factually, Jeff, you've tried many cases and many charges. Was there a charge that you could conceive of that George would have been guilty of?
Under the facts, no. No, but I can tell you strategy was from the prosecution was to overcharge the case and try to get a compromised verdict.
So they knew basically that they had little to work with. And what's the old lawyer saying? If you don't have the facts, argue emotion or something like that.
Jump up and down and yell.
And that's what they basically did.
Basically, yep.
In a nutshell.
Well, isn't that the case of the Casey Anthony case? I mean, didn't they kind of overcharge and it kind of bit him?
I think that was circumstantial evidence is what they were.
Right, and that was no way near a death penalty case. I do death penalty work.
No,
that was not a death penalty case, but they overcharged it, hoping they would get a first-degree conviction.
Robert, we've got to go to a quick break, but before we do, what's next for you?
That's a good question. We didn't know what was next day by day when this whole thing started becoming what it did. Now we're a week after acquittal, so we're kind of picking up the pieces, rebuilding our lives as they were. We'll never get that back, what normal used to be, but we'll figure it out day by day.
Day by day. Okay, and Dave. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. That's right, you are listening to the American Adversaries. 407-774-8255 is that number. And I see we got a couple of calls on the line there. Before we get to them, though, just let me remind you that we have Jeff Dowdy, our criminal defense expert, who's been with us the last month and a half or so, and he's I consider him a permanent part of our show now. And also Robert Zimmerman is joining us, George's older brother.
That's right.
Yes, and once again, thank you fellas for being with us tonight. I'm Christopher Hart, and along with Lair Adams, we are here. This next fellow, I don't know if you know him or not, Robert, but after tonight, I guess maybe you will.
We'll find out.
All right. His name is Ken, and let me welcome now Ken to our show this afternoon. Ken, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me on. Good afternoon, Robert.
Good afternoon, Ken.
Do you recognize his name here, Robert?
Is this a trick question? I'm not recognizing his name.
I'm
reading it forward and backward and inverting the letters. I'm not sure what I'm looking for, but...
All right, well, tell him, Ken, what you have up your sleeve, or what you used to have up your sleeve. Do we still have Ken?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Go ahead.
Well, I am the legal counsel for Buckeye Firearms Foundation, which is a Ohio-based 501c3, and starting about last Saturday, when we heard that the Department of Justice was withholding...
You're the fundraiser.
Right, for the fundraiser, yeah.
Now I know who you are. Yeah, okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to play hide the bunny, but yeah, that's who I am.
That was my doing.
Yeah, that's cool. No, thank you so much, Mr. Henson. That's the only way that George will have to support himself for the foreseeable future is, people's generosity. He can't really go to work or go out in public much unless it's to rescue people from overturned cars.
And we're going to get to that. That was an excellent job. Where did he find those stunt people? I don't know, 2 adults and 2 children. We're going to talk about that.
Disney, obviously.
Ken, back to you. Your organization has raised money for George Zimmerman to help him get back on his feet. Is that correct?
Well, what we raised money for when we heard the Department of Justice was withholding his personal property, including his gun, we sent out an email fundraiser alert to raise money for Mr. Zimmerman to, buy guns, buy training, buy home security systems, ballistic vests, anything he needs for himself, his family, his parents, to defend himself. When we heard the Department of Justice announcement, our 501c3 statement is that we defend people's firearm rights, and we felt that Mr. Zimmerman's firearm rights, after 2 different levels of government review, were now being violated. So we raised money to allow Mr. Zimmerman to defend himself, defend his family, however he thinks it's fit.
Can I ask you, Ken, how much you raised?
We raised just over $12,600, and after the net of the bank fees, because they charge us to, receive the money, the net of the check that's going to Mr. Zimmerman that will be in Mr. O'Meara's office tomorrow is just over $12,100.
Let me ask you this. Obviously, I don't want to know names, but where did the money come from, geographically speaking?
It came from 48 states in the United States, in 3 different countries internationally.
Wow.
That's incredible.
I believe the countries were Lithuania, Switzerland, and Australia. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and actually within Australia, I don't know if they count their states, but there were several states within Australia that we had different donations from also.
I can see that.
And by the way, folks, they miss their guns in Australia. They've been taken away from them for the most part out there. Are you going to continue to do this, Ken?
Well, we cut the fundraiser off on Tuesday. Honestly, the email solicitation we sent out was, this is, for guns, gear, ammo, training, whatever. And in 3 days, we just got our socks knocked off.
In 3 days?
We raised $12,000 in 3 days.
In 3 days.
So, we cut it off, I think it was Tuesday around noon, and cut the check. And Mr. O'Meara's office will have that tomorrow. But, the problem was, shortly after we cut off the fundraiser, we started getting internet attacks that completely shut down our website, things like that. So even if we had kept it open, we couldn't continue to raise funds. We'll be back up in a day or 2. Law enforcement has asked us not to comment in detail on it. But we accomplished the goal. We're sending this money on to Mr. Zimmerman. He gets to choose how he uses it to defend himself, defend his family. And that was our goal. So, mission accomplished.
Yeah, it was an incredible result in just 3 days, $12,000. And now I think the caution you have to approach things like helping George out with in terms of cyber attacks or other attacks. I would just caution you, to be careful. And I don't mean to sound too cautious, but you can never be too cautious sometimes being affiliated in any way with George, whether it's hacking your computer or having to look over your shoulder. But despite that risk, you did a great thing for him, and I thank you for it.
I really do appreciate that, Robert. And actually, yesterday morning, right before the cyber attack, 4 different members of our organization, they found our personal cell phone numbers, and before 7 a.m., we got the threatening phone calls saying, you'll be next.
Right.
And you get these typical Facebook feedbacks or the article feedbacks about you'll be next or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Those are keyboard commandos, but the guys that are seeking out our cell phone numbers, finding them, and calling us before 7 a.m. Eastern time, those are guys that have been motivated. So the nice thing is we have more guns than the liberals do usually.
I hear you.
I guess we'll leave it there, Ken. But by the way, do you want to give out your website in case somebody else, once you get it back up, would like to take a look at it?
Sure. It's www.buckeyefirearms.org, and we could be back up right now, but again, cooperating with law enforcement, they're looking behind these attacks.
Okay.
Because, there were some serious consequences.
Well, thank you. God bless you, and good luck, and the best wishes to your mother, who I believe is ill. So thanks, Ken. We appreciate it. Folks, we'll be right back. Adversaries, and it is drive time. Thank you once again for being with us this fine afternoon here in Central Florida. I am Christopher Hart, and along with Lair Adams, we have the pleasure of being joined in the studio this afternoon by Jeff Dowdy and Robert Zimmerman. And we're talking about, obviously, George Zimmerman and this whole fiasco.
And Robert is the older brother of George Zimmerman.
This whole publicity stunt. I'll tell you what I mean by that in a couple of minutes. But Danny has been holding on the line for quite a while, and he has a question for Robert. And you can call and ask a question as well, folks. 407-774-8255 is the number. Danny, thank you for calling this afternoon. And your question, please.
Hey, thanks for having me. I was just wondering, I heard about George rescuing some people out of a flipped-over car, and the mainstream media going at it again, saying that, George staged an accident just so he looks good. How can they get away with this kind of crap?
Well, I wanted to go there anyway, so let's do that. It is extraordinary. But it goes... Robert, you have talked about the mythology of this whole case, and it's extending to that. And what we mean by that is that the people who are, and for lack of better words, pro-Trayvon, they don't have any facts, so they come up with myth.
Yeah.
What Danny is talking about, and we reported this the other day, folks, is that George came across, and perhaps you can fill us in better on the details, but he came across an accident, and he helped people out. Now he's being blamed for staging the doggone thing.
Well, among other things, yeah, messing with their brakes, getting tipped off. It was some kind of, fake publicity stunt to make him appear to be some kind of hero. I don't think...
Oh, hey, it could happen.
Yeah, we are in Florida, where there is Disney. But
sure.
Yeah, but I don't think George will ever do anything right for some people.
Obviously not.
He's a pariah to so many, correct. I see what you're saying.
And to answer Danny's question more specifically, how do they get away with this? They get away with this because people allow them to. In other words, they continue to watch them even when they report this nonsense. However, this isn't really coming from the mainstream. This is coming from, social networking and such as that. But real quickly, can you actually give us the details more or less as you understand what happened the other afternoon?
Yes. First of all, George never told our family. We saw him after that. He never told his attorney. He just kept it to himself. It was just a normal occurrence.
Didn't brag about it.
Right. Didn't brag, didn't boast, didn't want any recognition for it. Left the scene. Was not included initially in the police report because he didn't actually witness what had happened. When he came on the scene, there was a car flipped over. I think it was on its side, and he thought it might have been on fire, so he went to the car with his fire extinguisher, or it might have been starting to catch fire because it's been rolled over.
Sure.
And he helped at least one man, at least one of these family members, him and another man, get out of the car safely. They were reported in the 911 calls from other witnesses to already be walking, so they appear to be not critically injured anyway. And that family reached out to George's lawyer and wanted to do a press conference to kind of put these, this mythology of him staging it or whatever to rest, but they backed out at the last minute. They were too afraid to, for their own safety. They cited the media hounding and people's cruelty. as the reasons that they didn't want to go public with their story. Nonetheless, their story has become public now. I mean, you can Google it, and you know who these people are. But. And
their fears were obviously well-founded. I mean, look at Ken.
Right.
Ken raised money, and as soon as people found out he was doing that, they attacked him and they attacked his organization.
Right.
It's cruelty. It is nothing less than cruelty what these people are doing. They have no business doing that. They have set themselves up as God. They have set themselves up as judge and jury and every doggone thing else, and none of them have any of their doggone facts right.
Right.
And that's why they resort to this mythology. Because they can't cite any real facts.
I think it's actually interesting that people get so riled up about this being staged or fake or whatever, because it actually truly does speak quite highly of George, and that he didn't boast about it.
That's why
they get so
exactly.
Right.
That's why they have to destroy it. He can't do anything good. We have a caller that's calling in that's going to talk about something as to what the people are claiming this is.
Well, let's take the calls in the order they came. Noster Dennis, our producer's on the line, but we've had Regina holding, so let's take Regina first. Thank you, Regina, for calling. And your comment, please, for Robert.
Hi, am I on now?
Yes, you are.
Hi, guys, I love your show. I just wanted to support Mr. Zimmerman. I am a black woman, and I believe in his innocence. I believe why a lot of black people don't believe Mr. Zimmerman because of their own racism. I believe, because he's white, they judged him. And I just wanted to ask his brother, what can we do to support your brother so he can get on with his life?
I appreciate that
very
much. I appreciate
God bless you,
asking.
Regina. Thank you for calling and asking that, Robert.
Yeah, I think, Regina happens to be a black woman, a self-identified black woman, and I think that the best thing we can do is to keep color and race out of the discussion of what happened that night. Does that mean we should not have a discussion about color or race in the criminal justice system? No. But I think it means that trying to fit some of the frustration she talked about in the African-American community, or African Americans experiencing racism themselves into this case, is never going to make sense because it was never a factor. So we're kind of sidestepping the conversation we should be having by focusing so much on this case.
Well, she may have also been asking something more substantial. Do you still have a website where people can send money to George, similar to what Ken was doing?
GZ Defense Fund is still, as far as I know, it's still operational, and it's still managed by the same trust manager that it was before the verdict, and it still has it's still functioning on the web, and it still is a functional operation. So that is the only place that I know of that's legitimate to send anything that would help George. Even that check that Mr. O'Mara is going to get presumably would be forwarded to that fund manager.
Now, let me ask you this, Robert. Isn't it a big part right now for George and his family to be simply left alone, to maybe get it's nearly impossible, but maybe to get some anonymity back, and just be real people again?
Yeah, I think that's psychologically healthy. I mean, we have not had meaningful interaction with many people. Everyone we do interact with, or that I have my parents, is mostly media or attorneys, and there's good reason for that, but it definitely wears on you psychologically to not be able to move about this earth without always looking over your shoulder, or having to do things in a very particular way over and over again to not be followed or not be tracked or not be...
And that's why I say it's a particular form of cruelty that people are doing this. It really is, because that's all they're trying to do, isn't it, Jeff?
It's difficult. I mean, Robert and I, we have to meet at an undisclosed location to travel anywhere. It's very difficult.
Well, I know
it's got to be stressful, obviously stressful to you.
All right, let's go to Jack, who's been holding for a while. And Jack, thank you for calling, and your comments, please.
Yes, thank you, Chris. One aspect which I think was really overlooked and really underused by the defense is the whole concept and the slur that was always thrown at George as being a wannabe cop. I was a citizen on patrol for the Sanford police for several years, and it's a scary thing. And we were never able to confront any suspects. We were patrols, and we did traffic control and parking tickets and things like that. And all the police that we met were very, very grateful for our effort to take all this little menial stuff off of their hands. And every time I hear him slurred as like a wannabe cop or this and that, I mean, that's like 180 degrees the way it should have been. That was an honorable thing for him to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And he risked his life. And I don't know why the defense didn't really emphasize that and saying, hey, this is a good guy. He's giving back to his community.
Did you serve here in Florida, Jack, as a citizen on patrol?
Yes, I was a resident of Sanford now I live in Longwood, but Yeah, I was COP for several years.
Okay, I don't know if you know, but it did come up during the trial. Wendy Dorval, the manager of this.
Sure.
You know, of the whole the Neighborhood Watch recommended George to be on Citizens on Patrol, and he actually turned it down, and that did come up. Yeah, he was recommended, and he turned it down. So I guess he didn't want to be a cop that much. But yeah, there was that's when the facts are not in your favor, you have to change the way that the person is portrayed.
And that phrase was used by the prosecution solely, in my opinion, just to inflame.
Well, that's what people are using now as far as the accident that he helped out on. Oh, no, that's the only reason why, because he's still a wannabe cop.
But Jack's the one who's got it right.
Yeah.
It's a noble thing, and actually they're putting their lives, as George proved, on the line and getting no thanks or money or anything else for it. Jack, excellent point. Excellent.
We never knew, and they were told us. They drilled it into our heads. Anytime you're approaching someone, you don't know if they're going to pull out a gun.
Yeah,
and it's a scary thing. I didn't do it because I would get an adrenaline thrill or anything. I did it because I was giving back to the community just the way George did.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you, Jack. Excellent point. We appreciate you being out there. Thank you for being a part of our show. 407-774-8255 is the number, folks. We now have a line open.
And we do have the best callers.
Absolutely. And best guests. And best producer, executive producer in town, and that'd be Nostradamus, and he's across town at headquarters. Nostradamus.
Thank you, guys. And this story about that accident, that's not what I heard at all. I heard that George Zimmerman put stop sticks down on I-4. He could flip over. And then he checked inside to make sure the people inside were white before pulling them out.
You have a great imagination.
Almost as good as the people out there actually saying this because they foolishly believe it. Speaking of foolishly saying things, there's been some foolish stuff said by the likes of Jay-Z and others, right, Nostradamus?
Well, see, here's the thing. There's some confusement over whether Jay-Z and Kanye West are part of this Boycott Florida effort. Mm-hmm. They have a big concert going on in about 3 weeks down in Miami.
Oh.
Jay-Z and Kanye West.
No, he was going, ooh, not who.
Ooh, yeah, okay. As of right now, that concert is still on. Johnny Guns went on there to purchase tickets. He didn't purchase them, but they are available for sale. You can get seats in the lower bowl for like $350. It's a really good ticket.
So he doesn't want anybody else to come here, but he's going to come here and take our money and go somewhere else, I guess, right?
Now, here's the point. Jay-Z is one of the minority owners, no pun intended, of the Brooklyn Nets. When the Nets have their schedule come out, they're going to have to come and visit Miami and Orlando unless they don't cross the state line, stay on the other side, and forfeit those games. What do you guys think he's going to do?
He's going to play the games and take the money, just like his concert. But I want to ask Robert, what do you think about people who are calling for a boycott of Florida over all this sort of thing?
I think celebrities are weird. I just,
Do you hear that, Stevie Wonder?
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird. There's great people in Florida. It's not Florida's fault. Its fault is a very bizarre word. It's not the same word as consequence. Why do people in Florida have to not have access to? But maybe they're doing the people of Florida a favor. Maybe if that's how you feel about Floridians, and maybe
stay away. Yeah, that's all I got to say. Just stay away. But
and if you want to cause boycotts, you can sometimes suffer boycotts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And people in the entertainment business need to think about that.
Oh yeah.
But you're absolutely right.
There's two different kinds of boycotts. There's a boycott of I'm not going to buy your product. And there's the boycott of, I'm not going to come into your state and earn money. I don't think very many celebrities would turn that down. Stevie Wonder's boycott was disingenuous. He's only playing 3 gigs between now and the end of the year. One is in New York. The other 2 are in Brazil.
Yeah, I don't think he ever actually had a very heavy concert tour schedule. Dennis, would you hold on? We have Harry on the line who would like to make a comment, or have a question for Robert. So let's go to Harry now. Harry, thank you for calling this afternoon.
Yeah, am I live?
You certainly are.
Okay, I just wanted to mention I was watching the Alex Jones show last night, and they had a gentleman on that sells body armor, and he's shipping a whole load of it to George and his family. So he'll be getting that in the next couple of weeks.
Well, thank you, Harry.
And I'll be mailing the O'Mara check from my personal account to him for the fund to handle any legal expenses, and that'll go out on August the 3rd when I get my Social Security check. So.
Well, God bless you, Harry.
Thanks, Harry. Keep it going. I enjoy your show, and and go George.
Hey, I tell you what, Harry, if you'll stay on the line and give Nick your address, I'll send you a $20 gift card to Cafe Positano. Take a little stink.
I've already been over there, and I've gotten one from you a couple of years ago, and we go there all the time, so I know where it's at. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Harry. I thank you very, very much. And Robert, are a lot of people doing this sort of thing?
I've had different. Brad Thor did a tweet about, hey, can I send your brother a new gun? I'll buy it. Other people have as well. I told Brad Thor that George needed prayer. Obviously he's armed, but I don't want to put him in a situation where people are kind of provoked because he's armed to get in some other confrontation with him or look for him even more. I think that's kind of a slippery slope. I don't ever tell people whether or not I'm armed for that reason.
Well, let me ask you this. Beth Kassab wrote she's an editorialist for the Sentinel, and she wrote a column, and it appeared in Saturday, July 20th. That's this, actually a couple of Saturdays ago, Orlando Sentinel, where she talked about Zimmerman can move on by tossing gun. And she's saying that George shouldn't want his gun back. Does he want it back? And if he does, what would he do with it?
You'd have to ask him. My advice to him would be to destroy it. I think that gun is just that particular gun.
Sure.
That actual firearm itself. Because I have myself received offers on email to buy it, and people are really crazy, these days. Is there any way I could get my hands on that gun? I'll buy it.
Oh, sure.
Or it should go in a museum, or I don't agree with those sentiments. Obviously, I think that gun should be destroyed. I think that would be symbolic if it were maybe not done publicly, but confirmed publicly through Mark O'Mara. That it actually happened. George should be armed if he's entitled legally to be armed and wants to be armed, and so should anybody else who's entitled to be armed and wants to be armed.
For people who don't think that he should have a gun, well, just look at all the threats that he's getting. Just look at what people get just for helping him out.
Right, and that's kind of the vicious cycle.
It is. Yeah. I mean, they're saying, oh, no, he shouldn't have a gun, but then they're going to turn around and put out death threats on him. Give me a break. Okay, let's go to Diane, and then we'll go back to Nostradamus because there's a couple more things I want to talk about. Diane, thank you for your call tonight.
I just want to tell the Zimmerman family in entirety that our prayers are totally with you, and we are so grateful for the verdict. And if there's anything we can do,
thank you, Diane.
We're right there. I mean, this is horrible, what's going on. And
you also mentioned something, Diane, about celebrity boycotts.
Oh, yes. Can we get Obama to boycott Florida, please?
Great idea.
Two lady was just up in Jacksonville. I wonder if he broke bread with Angela Corey while he was up there. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Who knows?
Good job, Angie.
Yeah, thank you, Diane, for the call. What did you and the family feel when President Obama came out the other day? Do you think that was helpful?
I made public remarks about that, and they should be interpreted as my remarks, not my brother's, remarks. And certainly I did represent my family as best I could before the verdict, but post-verdict, going out and remarking about things like that, I don't want people to get the wrong message. The remarks that I heard from the president, when they're just little sound bites, they can be a little bit misleading. If you listen to the whole thing, he's asking for a conversation. And I agree there should be a conversation. But previously, I said before that I don't think that this conversation should be so much about George in this case. I think using words like stand your ground confuses people. It just wasn't a factor in this case. And he strengthened, it's my understanding, when he was a senator in Illinois, he strengthened the stand your ground law.
He absolutely did.
In Illinois.
Yeah, believe it or not. State Senator Barack Obama. I have a quick question, then we have to go to the break, and when we come back, we'll take it back up again with Nostradamus. Does George Zimmerman listen to the American Adversaries?
I have no idea what I'm listening to now. No idea. But if you have a podcast, he could listen to it, on his iPod.
All right, just curious. If he's out there, hi, George. Okay.
Boy, that was fishing, Chris.
Once again, folks, we've got one more segment. It'll be quick, but we can take maybe one more phone call if you'd like that.
That's right, folks. American Adversaries are here. We only have a few minutes left, so I have a quick question for Robert. Actually, for both you gentlemen. Personally, I loved the verdict, but I was surprised. What were your feelings? I mean, I was afraid they were going to give him something, whether it's manslaughter or just something. But again,
Jeff, were you surprised?
Well, I thought when they came back with the question, they might be coming back with manslaughter, but I thought it was interesting when the clerk read the verdict, and I don't think George understood that he was not guilty.
Well, I think he was expecting another.
He was expecting something else because there was a lesser included charge, so it was a great surprise. Jurors followed the law.
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah. Robert, would relieved be the appropriate word? Relieved?
Yeah, I think I was on this show actually here saying that we were concerned about the lesser included. It's
correct.
Concerned that, people who are there thinking they're serving to determine if there was a murder, all of a sudden get this thing thrown at them. Well, if it wasn't a murder, could it have been a manslaughter? And you can confuse lay people like that.
Okay. Patrick has called in, and I'm sorry, Patrick, we only have 3 minutes, so I don't have enough time to take your call. Thank you for calling, but we'll bring up your thought. Robert, your thoughts on Al Sharpton and Obama?
I think Al Sharpton, he was responsible for this mythology initially of defied police instructions and got out of his car.
He was practically bragging about it the other day on MSNBC when he said that he organized a lot of this outrage over this.
Right.
That's how he did it.
It's exploiting people's emotions. It's not something that I can, support, obviously. I mean, people are outraged and they shouldn't be misguided in their outrage by someone like him, but yeah, he's relied on that mythology. He was in the town hall of Sanford talking about George defying police instructions and was told not to get out of his car and did so anyway, and that mythology persists to this day. It's just a lie.
That's
never happened. You can
it's
listen
not
to
a misstatement. It's a lie.
It's a lie.
That's all it is. Nostradamus, you have 1 minute. Your comment. What last comment for Robert or question? Nostradamus? Do we have Nostradamus? Okay.
Well, he has less than that then.
All right. Well, let's just go ahead and wrap it with this. You mentioned that one of the main things you need is prayer.
Right.
I would add to that as well forgiveness. And I've been calling for this on our show since the verdict came down, that this is what needs to happen. Forgiveness both ways. I mean, you and your family and George need to forgive all those, even the ones right now who are issuing you the death threats. And in particular, Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin need to find forgiveness in their hearts, if for no other reason that it would be good for their souls. That really needs to happen. I would like to see that happen. If the two families could somehow find their way together through all of this, can you imagine how powerful that would be to the likes of defeating the likes of Al Sharpton and Piers Morgan, who you were so effective on his show? Your thought?
Yeah, I don't have anything. I've said it before. If Sabrina Fulton walked in this room right now, I'd give her a hug. If Tracy Martin walked in, I'd shake his hand. And
would George do the same? Would he?
I'd be inclined to believe so. I don't think that he has an issue.
He's not proud of what he did, is he?
No, proud is completely the wrong term.
He has an ache in his heart for what he did, doesn't he?
Correct. Yeah. Anybody who has to take a life to save their life really had no choice in the matters, and it is painful.
And Jeff, isn't it true that police officers who use their weapon, not being shot, but shoot people in the line of duty, oftentimes have real problems afterwards?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, they go to counseling. It's mandatory that they go to counseling because it's a very difficult situation.
All right. This won't be the last time these guys are on our show, folks. So
that's right. Folks, this was not a man who was out there to gun somebody down. He does care. So do we. We are the American Adversaries. We'll see you tomorrow.
Night, everybody.